Hey, so at the beginning of the year, I made the resolution to read more German books that were written in German originally in the year 2024 and beyond, of course. And I made good on that promise to myself. I did quite well. So I thought, since I read a nice even number of books in German, I thought, why not do a wrap up? So I have 10 books to talk about here, and I'm going to go through them in order of least favorite to most favorite. And I'm afraid the one that I will have to start with is a short story collection, a very famous short story collection by the author Heinrich Böll. Now, Heinrich Böll is a fantastic writer. He is the author of the amazing novella The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. And the reason that this book ranks so low, this collection, is simply that it didn't give me anything new. When these stories were first published, they certainly nudged the intellectual discourse in certain directions that it hadn't dared go before. However, for me in the year 2024, these stories didn't offer anything, consciousness expanding or something like that. So I didn't even read this collection all the way through. I read a few stories, among others, the eponymous, most famous story, Wanderer, kommst, nach, but none of what I read sparked any particular interest. So I DNF'd it and put it back into the little free library from whence it came. My second least favorite book was a novel. It was Corpus delicti by Juli Zeh. My first Juli Zeh that I read, and an early one of hers. This is a dystopia about a near future in which a totalitarian state forces everybody to be healthy all the time and demands documentation and proof of the individual people's state of health all the time. And this is done, of course, in the name of the common good, which comes in the form of economic proficiency and just a healthy state of the state, if you will. No, for one, I found this awfully on the nose. There's no subtlety whatsoever in this, and it is just as subtle on the one hand, and on the other hand also as nuanced and complex as your average YA dystopia. But it certainly thinks of itself as something else, something quite more elevated. And to me, that was downright ridiculous. To me, this read like the work of a very young person who is under the mistaken assumption that a certain thought or idea is something new and mind-blowing just because it is new to them, just because they have come upon it for the first time recently. And yet, this might not be my last Juli Zeh. I might give her a second chance, yet I would like to see what she is writing now that she has matured much more. Number 3 was quite the disappointment. It is Das Fräulein von Scuderi, Mademoiselle de Scuderi by E.T.A. Hoffmann. Now, E.T.A. Hoffmann is one of my favorite classical German authors. He wrote excellent, creepy, eerie tales, Schauerliteratur in German. His Golden Bowl, The Golden Bowl, is my favorite one of his, but The Sandman is also excellent, and of course The Nutcracker is The Nutcracker. But this one, it's just so boring. It is German Miss Marple, but make it boring. In this story, the elderly spinster, Mademoiselle de Scuderi, who is a courtier on the court of Louis XIV, she doesn't even go about solving the murder mystery that is at the center of this story by herself. She just gets the solution to the mystery told to her. And we are literally reading the letters with her and having the story told to us with her, together with her. We are listening to it together with her. And it's just makes, I don't know, it's just such a boring story concept. I don't know really what happened here, what made E.T.A. Hoffmann think that this was a good concept for the telling of this story. He's usually so good at storytelling, and I will definitely read him again, just not this one. Number 4, my fourth least favorite book is Die Bergwacht, Mountain Rescue by Sophie, which is apparently a pen name for a well-known author, but I haven't put any effort into finding out what the author's real name might be, because chances are I don't know her anyway. I really don't know why I thought it was a good idea to buy this and to read this. The story is set in a fictitious small town near the town of Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is the town closest to Germany's highest mountain, Zugspitze. It's a large mountaineering area and a large ski resort in the winter. And of course, lots of accidents happen there, and therefore lots of mountain rescue operations. And mountain rescue in Germany is volunteer work, just as in the UK, for instance. And of course, I'm sure you can write excellent stories about mountain rescue operations, and I love watching documentaries. However, this genre-wise, this is what is called Heimatroman in German, which is the kind of cozy tale that I detest, which puts a lot of romanticizing attention on details that are unnecessary and indulgent, like food and a romanticizing version of small town life, and I don't know, the animals on the pastures, etc. And this just becomes so tedious after a while. And by a while, I mean like after 3 pages. The only reason I haven't given this away yet is because it's so pretty, and I kind of I'm keeping it in a self-ironic way. Next, I have a poetry collection, a collection of poems by the author Erich Fried, an author of the post-war period. I was lucky enough to have found this in a little free library, and it is the second volume of poems by Erich Fried that I have found in a little free library. And this time I realized something. I realized that I like Fried's poems more for what they say than for how they say it. I appreciate the topics that he talks about and what he says about them more than I like the reading experience and the experience of being in the poem, because there really is no such experience. The poems are really very straightforward. I hesitate to liken them to Insta poetry, because what these poems talk about does elevate them above that level. It's not just about feely-feels and bad dating experiences, but it is about rather important and rather grim social, societal, political topics. And therefore, I think they are always worth reading. They're just not my favorite kind of poetry. And now we come into favorites territory. Also from a little free library, I got Hermann Hesse's Unterm, translated into English under the title Beneath the Wheel, which would be a literal translation from the German. And more recently, I think, under the title The Prodigy. And this is the tragic story of a gifted student who becomes disenchanted with the idea that his formal education is to be prized above anything else in his life and in this world, and that it has to be pursued with a single-minded focus to the detriment of his health and also all his other interests. It is a very simple story at the end of the day, but a very effective one and a very affecting one. And then there was Ein Sommer in Niendorf, A Summer in Niendorf by Heinz Strunk. How to explain this one? So this is the story of a man in older middle age, a corporate lawyer who takes a 3-month sabbatical in order to write that novel that he has always wanted to write, that is based on his family history. And in order to isolate himself from any distractions, he relocates to a small town on the Baltic Sea coast called Niendorf. And there, over the course of the next 3 months and a bit, he goes native in rather dramatic ways. And this book is just escalation all around. And although this book is farcical all around, I thought that it had some really profound moments and some profound things to say. And that was whenever the guy, our protagonist, was having negative thoughts about, well, his surroundings and the people with whom he interacts and just about everything and everyone. Because up to a certain point, all his complaints, I think, were legitimate, and his observations, scathing and unforgiving as they may have been, were also really quite accurate and justified. However, there always came a point with each and every observation, each and every complaint, that he took it quite a bit too far. And I think this works as a good reminder for the reader that it is always important to reflect upon one's own thoughts and to ask oneself, am I taking this too far right now? Am I being too ungracious? Am I crossing a line here into just nastiness territory? And therefore, reading A Summer in Niendorf was both fun in a car crash watching kind of way, and also really rather profound at times. Not sure if I'll pick up anything else by the author, but I sure as hell enjoyed this one. Number 8 is actually my second favorite German book of the year. It is kleine Grenzverkehr. Something like small-scale border crossing by Erich Kästner, which is one of the biggest names in 20th century German literature. But I wasn't aware of this title until I took a trip to the southern German town of Bad Reichenhall, where this book is partially set, and the indie bookstore there had it on display, and so I bought it on a whim, and it was a complete success. But for the most part, the story is set in the Austrian town of Salzburg, which is right across the border from Bad Reichenhall, where I went. And this takes place in the context of the big annual opera festival in Salzburg. And in a very fitting manner, this book reads like a Mozart operetta. It is low stakes, kind of low drama, but high in shenanigans. Just instead of horses and hoop skirts, we have castles and convertibles. I read this on the balcony during my summer break from work, and I loved this reading experience. And I think if this has been translated into your native language or a language that you read in, it would be the perfect summer read. And my favorite German book of the year is perhaps no surprise to anybody who's been watching my channel this year. It is Dunkelblum by Eva Menasse. This is a small-town symphony set in eastern Austria, and it deals with a war crime that was committed in this town at the end of the Second World War. It examines the preconditions, so the small-town society and politics in which the crime occurred, and it examines its repercussions until the year 1989, when the main story is actually set. I'm not going to talk much more about this here because it will also be featured on another year-end list. Spoilers. I just wanted to say that I saw the other day that this has recently been translated into English, finally, under the title Darkenbloom, which is kind of it's a translation just of the title Dunkelblum, which is the name of the small town. However, I think that the name Darkenbloom makes it sound rather like a Gothic novel, which it couldn't be further from. So please don't let yourself be turned off by that title or go into it with false expectations. The story elements, but also the tone of the book couldn't be further from a Gothic novel. So now you're probably wondering why I said I read 10 books when I only read 9. And the answer is because I cheated and I counted the book, the last German book that I am hopefully going to read this year. And that is going to be The Castle in the Clouds by Kerstin Gier, das Wolkenschloss in German. So of all the books that Kerstin Gier has written, The Castle in the Clouds is actually the only one that sounds the least bit interesting to me. And I found this again in a little free library, one of those amazing little free library finds. It's a hardcover, it's in perfect condition, it's beautiful, and I think it's going to be my cozy read with which I'm going to ring out the old year. But that is hopefully not going to be the end of my German reading streak. I already have plans for next year. I only have 4 specific books lined up though. One of them is going to be my next Hermann Hesse read that I'm going to read, and it is probably going to be Der Steppenwolf, although I have a handful of other Hermann Hesse novels and novellas still on my shelf as well. Another one is going to be Herr Lehmann, Mr. Lehmann, a cult classic of the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, has been made into a movie as well. My third book is a more recent release. It was, I think, first published in 2023, and the paperback release was this autumn, this September, I think. It is called At Sea, zur See, by Dörte Hansen, a new-to-me author, and this continues my reading tradition of small-town symphonies, although in this case the small town is actually an island. I think it is a North Sea island. Yes, it is a North Sea island, and this is probably going to be a summer read just because it is set on an island, which is not at all justified, but this is just what I associate with the sea and with islands. And the last German book that I have on my TBR is an Austrian classic called Radetzky Marsch by Josef Roth, which is an Austrian classic about just the demise of the aristocracy and the whole societal order after the end of the Austrian Empire. It wouldn't normally have occurred to me to pick this up, but Eva Menasse, who is the author of Dunkelblum, recommends this, and it is apparently one of her favorite books, and I love her as an author and as a person. She's kind of a public intellectual, so I think I can't go terribly wrong with this one. However, I definitely mean to read more German books than just these 4 next year, and I hope I make a few great discoveries just like I did this year. Have you read any German books this year? Tell me so in the comments if you have, or tell me what's on your German reading TBR. I'll see you again very soon, guys. Bye!